He leads us all the way, playing proper football, the Sheff United way. Ale, 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 ale.
Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else who is joining us here today. Welcome to the Sheff United Way match reaction for our first home game of the season, which was an entertaining but ultimately very disappointing 2-2 draw with QPR. Now, to describe this as a game of two halves feels almost like it's an understatement. I mean, for 45 minutes, United were far and away the better team. I thought QPR looked really passive in their press. I thought they looked slow when they got the ball. I thought they just completely looked out of ideas. Whereas United looked crisp. We got some really nice interchanges working through our midfield. We got O'Hare and Harmer and Brooks and Moore, and they were playing together so nicely, creating chances, breaking through, and we were just so in control of this game of football. It looked like United, not just 2-0 up, but it looked like United were going to kick on and really win this game. I thought we were going to win this 3-0, 4-0. I thought we had everything we needed to just completely and utterly put this game to bed. And then the second half started, and it was almost the exact opposite. It was complete chalk and cheese to what we'd seen before. They pressed us high. They were controlling the midfield battle. When they got the ball, they had a plan for how they were going to try and break us down, how they were going to work through us. They got one tricky little lad coming in off one wing, Dembele, who looked utterly fantastic and was really causing us problems every time he got anywhere near the ball. And then on the United side, all of that creativity I just talked about, the interchanging, the passing, the Harmer, the O'Hare, the Moore, the Brooks, it just went missing. All of those sort of creative players just completely disappeared. And once the going had got tough, we just crumbled, as we saw so many times last season. And there was so much of that felt very, very familiar. Now, United were trying different things. We were trying to get down the wings, but we just could not keep the ball. We just kept playing ourselves into trouble time after time. And so it felt a little bit inevitable when we got the sucker punch right at the end of this game. I thought that when Raksaki came on, it was too little too late. He gave us some impetus. He made a difference. He started to beat his man and get down that wing, but the final ball was never there. And if we're being honest, QPR deserved the point, more than deserved the point. I thought second half, they put out a very good performance. I thought Cifuentes really did a job on Wilder by the changes that he made to their tactics, to their style. I thought it meant that we were very reactive, and it took us so long to make our changes that Cifuentes had already made that change in the game, and we just could not get that momentum back. So that was really disappointing to see. In the ground, now this may have been aimed at the ref, but there was definitely some boos that were heard around the ground at full time. And I just wanted to reflect on that a moment, because I think they were aimed at the ref. And if they were, then fairly deserved, because it was utterly insane, because his second half performance was almost as bad as United's. I've got no idea what he was doing, but we will come to that. In terms of the boos, if they were aimed at the club, though, I kind of get it. You know, we're coming off the back of a season where we've been battered week after week, where the fans are run down, where we've seen that second half performance, that capitulation. We've seen it time and time and time again for 38 games in the Premier League. It is unacceptable to throw away games the way that we've thrown it away today. But we were very good. I want to labour this point, because I'm the negative guy. I'm negative all, and everybody knows it. You come to listen to me talk, and for some reason I find all the negatives whenever we do it. But today there were some real positives. I thought that first half we were so good, and it showed us what we could be. If we can work on our fitness, if we can keep that going for 90 minutes, it really showed us what it could be, because we were really good. And I just want to make sure that we get that there. It's early in the season. We're learning our patterns. We're learning what we're doing. It is so frustrating that we've come out with this result, but we were nearly there. And so I want us to have that image in our minds as we go through the game. And so we'll start off with how I felt at 2 o'clock, because I thought the starting 11 was a bit of a shock. We were unchanged from that very comfortable win we had last week at Preston, But I was expecting some changes for this one. I thought that Cooper almost certainly would come in and start. I thought he would just be number one and we would recognise that straight away. We didn't. I think maybe we've learned. We threw Gerbich in, if you remember. He was with the club sort of 24 hours, 48 hours. Threw him in. He had an absolute shocker on debut and he's never recovered from that. So maybe that's why Cooper wasn't in. I thought we would see Suter start. I thought he would come into this first 11. I thought that maybe we'd see a change through our defence. I thought we'd recognise that they're going to have Lyndon Dykes or, as it turned out, some other big, bold lad who I didn't recognise, who is going to be really physical, really dominant. And so maybe we'd want Suter to counter that. But again, we didn't see that. We started with the same 11, and that was rewarded so quickly. Like, it was a crazy start to the game where it felt like United just looked dangerous on every attack. I know that QPR had a moment sort of 20 seconds in where they got a nice dribble, but United just really started like a house on fire. After 6 minutes, we took the lead, and it's a fantastic goal. You know, Gus Harmer with another fantastic finish. That's two brilliant goals that he's scored in the last two games, which is a great start to the season from him. But it all started with great work from Vinny Souza. He'd gone down, he'd attacked forward, he'd pressed them high, he'd won the ball back really high. He worked it into Callum O'Hare, who'd done really well to get to the edge of the box, just laid it off for Harmer to do the rest with a beautiful finish into the corner. And again, that's the interchange I'm talking about. That's what we want to see from this team. That's what this team can do. O'Hare, Harmer, Moore, Vinny. They link together, they create chances. We then saw even more from O'Hare just 5 minutes later. The first booking goes to Jake Clark-Salter 11 minutes in. A flick from Moore put O'Hare in, and O'Hare was just really clever. Flicked it up over the defender's head. You think, oh, nice, that's going to look good. It's going to earn him a chance to maybe drive us forward. It just earned him an elbow in the face, if we're being honest. The lads just took him down. Quite cynically, it's a yellow card. But again, simplifies a really good start from United. We've really got going. And then not long after that, it is 2-0. A fantastic quick break, but this one is all about Callum O'Hare. Just talked about something he did well in terms of earning a booking. This one earns us a goal, and it's all about him. It's body strength as the ball's coming forward. It's a long kick up, and he's just holding the defender off, spinning him, and he sets off. And once he's gone, he's not quite got the pace to get away. The defenders get back at him, but he knows perfectly when to just release the ball to Harmer, drills it across goal. Kiefer Moore, 2-0. We're what, 12 minutes in at this point? And you're thinking, hello, here we go. This is exactly where we want to be. So that 12 minutes, dominant and just looking like a team destined to do really well in this league. We then start to see the game fall away from us. I thought after that, we were never quite as vibrant again. I thought we were still very good for the first half, but never quite as vibrant. It became a bit more of a scrappy game, a bit more bitty. Vinny Souza got United's first booking. The ref, I think he was saying you've done 5 fouls, which if he was, fair play, but it was so soft. I don't remember him doing 5 fouls. So yeah, it felt a little bit bizarre and maybe set the tone for what comes in the second half. We then get right up to half time and they get another booking. This time, one of their lads' heads just completely looks like it's gone. We're dominating them a little bit and Varane started kicking out. You can see that their players are frustrated at how easily we're knocking it around, about the patterns of our play, about how they can't get close to us. And so we're starting to see that. So 2-0, half-time. Vinny's a man possessed. Harmer, O'Hare and Brooks are looking brilliant. Moore's got his first goal for the club. Happy days. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turns out absolutely everything could go wrong from this point on because we never turned up for the second half. Not at all. For 45 minutes, we never once turned up at all through that second half. QPR looked a different team. They obviously changed their tactics. They stepped onto us. They pressed aggressively. They started triggering the press at our defence rather than letting it come into midfield. They were winning that midfield battle because we couldn't work the ball out into Blaster, into Souza with time. And we were just penned in. And it felt inevitable that they were going to start and they were going to score. And if we're being honest, that they were going to score too. So the first goal comes and it's a really poor bit of defending. It looks like a really weak corner, crossed into the near post. And somebody's not tracked the man. So their lad's able to just run through. He's a big lad and he just flicks it across goal. And it's a great goal from the QPR perspective. It's lovely. Don't get me wrong. They'll be really happy with how that corner routine's worked. But from we've got 2 big questions to answer. Who's let their man just make that run? And second, and maybe this is harsh, I've not seen it again, but positioning of the goalkeeper? Because once that lad heads it, he's got a massive net to aim at. And I don't know if that's because Davies has been dragged towards the ball. I don't know if he's just started on his near post, hoping that he can sort of get out and respond to it. But it's a really easy finish. And there's a lot of questions about our defending for how it's been that easy, especially bearing in mind that we also conceded from a set piece against Wrexham midweek. It's just something we want to be aware of and something that maybe we need a little bit more work on the training ground. So after that, we're now going to talk about the ref. And that's because this went insane. I actually thought for an hour he'd done fine. But the ref was no problem. I thought he'd done okay. I barely noticed him. He'd done a bit of a weird booking for Sousa. But, you know, I understood it. It seemed like he'd explained it. And then he lost his mind, I think. Like after an hour, he just lost his mind altogether. And I think he forgot the rules of the game of football. I think he'd just completely forgotten that he was supposed to be in control of this game. He was just letting... Every time United got anywhere near the ball, it was a foul. Every time... There was a moment where we weren't even near the ball. Harmer was just running through on goal. Their lads grabbed onto him. He shrugged him off and he's giving them a free kick and booked Harmer. And it just made no sense whatsoever. He then follows it through and sends their lad off. And this is obviously for two bits of dissent. And in the crowd, you can't see, you can't hear what's being said. But it was just bizarre the way it played out. The first booking, you saw it, there'd been a foul. The second one, the player's nowhere near the ref, nowhere near the fourth official. He's just stood in the centre circle, clearly mouthing off about something. And then suddenly the ref stopped play, come and booked him. And then he just loses his track altogether. He stops play for a corner and leaves them stood there a minute. He stops play for a throw-in, leaves them stood there a minute. It just made no sense. It was almost as if the ref needed to stop the game to try and remind himself of what the rules were and what he was trying to do here. But when we finally get back to focusing on the football and we forget the ref nonsense, there's still a real game happening here. And QPR are coming at us, even down to 10 men. QPR are coming at us. They're pushing forwards. And United aren't even able to control this game against 10 men. We're not able to reset ourselves to just do the professional job of seeing this game out. Keep the ball, pass it around. If we need to time waste a little bit. Do the professional job and make sure that they don't get back into this game. And that's the complete opposite of what we do. And I mean, we needed subs all game. All through the second half, we'd needed subs. We were so late, so reactive. We'd let the momentum build and build and build so that we were just stuck behind the ball. We then made very defensive subs. We were taking off our attacking outlets, bringing on holding midfield players, which meant that we were even further penned back, further pushed in. And yet, we bring on defensive-minded players. We bring on so effectively, we're playing 5 central midfielders by the end of the game. And you're thinking, right, at least if we've got 5 central midfielders, we know our role. We're going to have midfielders in the middle who are going to challenge with their midfielders. Believe it or not, that's a thing that happens. And then we'll have defenders who are capable of defending. You'll say if there's a winger and there's a really quick winger who looks a little bit dangerous, what you'll probably do is you'll stand next to him and you'll be like, right, this winger's good. What I won't do is run as fast as I can forwards into the middle of the park. I'll not bring the centre half with me, who's also going to run forwards. We're not going to miss the ball altogether and leave him free to run. Oh, no, that's exactly what we're going to do. And Burrows and Robinson have a lot to answer for here because it makes no sense. How can both of them get dragged into this position, let the ball get in behind them, and then they're just in on goal? This Saito, he'd looked exciting from the moment he'd come on, but this didn't need to be good. This just needed to be a professional footballer. And he's just sprinting down on goal because our defence has completely fallen apart. It is brain-dead decision-making that leaves him running at goal in the 90th minute with no defenders around him. We finally charge back, but because we're getting dragged back, we're not in position properly. We're not set properly. We leave the space for him to play the pass across to Dykes, who's got a really nice finish, passed it into the corner, 2-2. And look, I've said it before, QPR deserved this. QPR very much deserved to come back into this game to get the 2-2. United did not deserve to win. The second half performance was nowhere near the level. We didn't deserve anything. But just to lose it this way, this is throwing the game away. Forget the performance. This was just throwing away a goal. And we can't do that. I know that defending is probably the one area of United squad where we are so weak. We saw last season, and yet we've still got the 2 same centre-halves starting every game. We've got to do something different because this isn't good enough. We threw on Raksaki at the end. He should have been on earlier. Clearly, when we were taking our subs off, maybe pace and somebody running down the wing would have made a difference. And so maybe before the 91st minute, who am I to judge? I'm not a football manager, but I would have had him on much earlier. When he came on, I thought he did make a difference. I thought United finally did try and get on the front foot. I thought he was beating his man down that consistently. Every time he got the ball, he beat his man, got to the byline. His crossing was quite poor. I thought we were really missing that final ball when he got into fantastic positions. But for 5 minutes, I can't really argue for what he did and what we were asking him to do. So it finished 2-2, and it's a fair reflection of the game. There's individual performances to reflect on, and there's questions to be asked. Why did we change so much from the 45-minute point to the end of the game? Sousa, Hamer, O'Hare running the game, brilliant. You just can't stop them for 45 minutes. The second 45 minutes, they went missing. They got completely overrun. Burrows, he's got flashes of potential going forwards where you think he's a player. We can see what we're going to do here. And then as soon as he gets asked that defensive question, terrible decision making, lets their lad in behind him and potentially costs us the game. Robinson, he had a fantastic, we like Robinson. Everybody likes Jack Robinson. He tries hard. I've said this before. I like him a lot. He tries really hard. He's our club captain. He represents a lot of the good things I like about Sheffield United. But today reminded us that there are severe questions about how good he is in terms of his actual defending and how much he's going to be able to take us forward. It's a bad decision. When he sees Burrow run for that ball, he should be sitting in behind. As bad as it is from Burrows to make that decision, once he's made it, Robinson's a senior professional who's played a lot of games of football. Sitting behind, watch the man, don't follow him in. It's just really poor. And so we really need to start thinking about how we're going to improve on that aspect of the game. How are we going to get our defence up to the level where they can actually hold out in games when we're actually under the cosh for a while? Because we can't just capitulate the way we have done today. But overall, I mentioned at the start, I was like, I'm really negative normally, but I'm not going to be negative today. I was then negative repeatedly for 17 minutes. So well done me, top work, pat on the back. If I'm being honest, I actually thought this was a good game of football to watch. After last season, there's something that's actually quite nice about saying I've seen a Sheffield United team today that for 45 minutes were really entertaining, that played good attacking football, and that were fun. I had fun watching us in the stands at Bramall Lane, and I've not watched United and had a lot of fun watching us. Well, before Preston, I'd not had fun watching United for a very long time. And so for how unacceptable, for how disappointing, for how pathetic the second half was, I was actually entertained by United for 45 minutes today. And that's nice. Let's hope we can get more of that. Let's hope that that can be for 90 minutes rather than for 45. But let's not forget that for 45, it was nice. But it also reminds me today that I need to change my perspective a little bit. The signings we've made, I've seen Cooper come in, Suter come in, Moore come in. We've got O'Hare and Hamer, and now you're looking at Raksaki. And I was getting carried away. I was thinking, look at this starting 11. We've got one of the best starting 11s in the team. We're going to be fantastic. We should be up there competing. And maybe today has just reminded me that there's still a long way to go with this team. Maybe we've got a lot of mentality problems that we've got to overcome because senior leaders in this squad have been beaten down for 18 months. And you could see the impact of that on the pitch today. That was a team that have forgotten how to win. They've forgotten how you see out a game of football. And they're just the shell of a football team that we saw last season when the going really got tough at the end. We've also seen that our squad, the depth behind that starting 11 maybe wasn't good enough. When QPR changed the game, when they pressed forward, when their midfield took control of it, what were our options? You know, once we'd realised that Hamer, O'Hare, Sousa, they dropped out of the game a little bit, they were getting bypassed. What were our options to change it? Ultimately, if we want to change something in our midfield, you're taking off a £10 million central midfielder in Vinny Sousa and you're putting on a lad who's got 3 EFL appearances in his career in Peck. Now, I'm really excited by Peck. I think he's going to be a fantastic footballer, but it's just putting that context there of behind this starting 11, there are still big gaps. And hopefully we've learned that lesson on the 17th of August. And we make a difference to that between now and September. Because once September comes, that's when your team's set. We need to have a squad good enough to be competitive at that point. And today just reminded me that behind our starting team, there's just a little bit of work to do. But you have listened to me ramble on for more than long enough. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Let's see what you're saying about the game today and really start to see how we are feeling as a fan base coming out of the first home game back in the Championship and back in the season. Now, Justin is where we will come to first. Now, Justin seems to match me, which is nice, and I promise I picked him out purely for that reason. I was going to deny it, but I did. Very annoying, because we were very good for so long, but we stepped off in the second half, which is frustrating. My thoughts exactly, and I think it is going to be exciting, but we've got to get over this hump. We can't let second halves really start to be a problem. We can't let them just run on and on and on. We'll now look at some of the other comments. So Ian comes in. He thinks that Wilder cost us because the changes were made too late. Now, I came to that a little bit there at the end, and our changes were much too late. But this is also something we saw last season, where Wilder didn't trust the squad, didn't think the squad were good enough. And he said that quite frequently. He said, once the starting 11's out, they're okay. But once we have to make changes, the level of the team drops off so much. And we saw it a lot last season, where we made subs and then conceded goals. And we've seen it again today. We've made subs and conceded goals because the level just isn't there. And so I agree, Wilder should have done something earlier. Maybe should have switched it up, done something different when the game wasn't working for us. But a lot of that does sometimes come down to squad options. So I think there's a column A and a column B in that I think Wilder needed to be more proactive, needed to change the game, needed to recognise that Cifuentes and QPR were doing a job on him. But secondly, probably looked at his bench and thought, I'm not sure we've got the options. The big one obviously should have been Raksakian earlier. Raksakian, when they go down to 10 men, to force them back, to give their defenders something to think about. That's certainly where I would have been looking. But, you know, nobody pays me to manage a football team. So, you know, what do I know? Stuart comes in to say that he thinks Robbo's time is up. Now, Robbo is, of course, our club captain. He was also, I think, last year, one of the few shining stars. He never gave up. He never let his head go. In the Premier League, I recognise that the quality of Robbo is not good enough. I think everybody does. I think everybody knows that on the pitch, you probably want an improvement. But he has shown everything I would want a Sheffield United player to show. And so I have a lot of respect, a lot of time for Robbo. Do we maybe need to upgrade? Potentially. But while ever is at United, I will support him because I do think that in terms of his mentality, in terms of the way that he led us last season, I had a lot of time and a lot of respect for that. And so I'm going to defend him, even though I think you're right. And we probably should start to think about whether or not we move on. Now, where else have we got yet? Who thinks that? There we go. Chris the Blade asking the question that was on my mind, very much on my mind at the start of game today. I said it at the start. When we got to 2 p.m, I was so shocked that Cooper wasn't in the team. I couldn't believe that Cooper wasn't starting today. I get it. And like I say at the start, I think maybe we're thinking back to Gerbic. We're thinking that actually we chucked Gerbic in too soon. It failed him and then ultimately failed the club as a transfer. So maybe we're trying to be patient. We're trying to say, okay, let's give Cooper some time with the squad, time with the players. If he's not starting next week, I would be asking big questions because I expect him to come straight in today. I understand giving him another week, but he has to start next week, I think, because we really want to make sure that we've got a keeper who's going to win us points rather than one who can deliver par. And I do think Davis has delivered par so far. He's not let us down. But yeah, let's have an upgrade. Let's get them in. Same with Raksake. He's clearly somebody we want in the squad who's going to be very exciting. I thought we saw glimpses of that when he came on today. He should have been on earlier. I understand why we didn't start him, given that he only signed sort of 24 hours ago. But certainly there were questions to be asked there because I do think that we had big questions to answer. Now, I referenced at the start that I thought I'd heard boos around the ground. We've got people in the comments just confirming that they felt they deserved to boo. Ian said he was one of the ones who did, and I completely sympathise with that. I said at the start, for the performance alone today, for the second half performance alone today, they deserved it. Coming off the back of last season, there's a lot of, what's the word? There's a lot of almost trauma. And it feels excessive. I'm talking about football. But there's trauma associated with what happened to United last season. It was horrible to see us, even when we played well. Think Fulham at home. We played really well. We were 3-1 up. We threw it away, just like we threw it away today. We got beat week after week after week. And they disappointed, let down the fans. Every single week they let us down. They've let us down every week for 18 months up to this point. And so I completely understand why the build-up of that, followed by seeing what felt very, very familiar today, would cause the fans to react that way. And I completely get it. For me, I was just focusing, and I'm trying to focus on the positives of how good we were in that first half and how well those players had driven us forward. And also the fact that a new season, a new change, let's try and make sure that we are driving us forward, that we're a team that's competitive in the Championship. Let's hopefully not continue to see these mistakes week after week, because we can't let that happen again. We need to make sure that we see them forward. We've got some questions coming up about some of the signings that we've made. So Paul is reflecting on Burrows' performances so far, thinking about where we are looking. I think we're looking at... Where do I stand on Burrows? So I've focused today on, I think he's got a lot of defensive growing to do. I think he's going to be a very exciting footballer. I think, for me, I'm going to be patient. We've signed him from League One. It's a big step up from League One to the Championship. It's also the fact that he's probably used to being a wing-back. He was a very attacking wing-back last season. We've seen that he can go forward. When he gets on the ball, he can drive. But defensively, there's a lot of work still to do with him. I think he needs a really senior professional next to him. And, you know, whether or not this is Robbo is up for debate, but somebody next to him who's going to be able to talk him through the defensive parts of those games. When he makes mistakes, rash decisions like charging up to try and win the header, somebody who's going to be sensible enough to sit in behind him to really try and control that game. But what I will say is, and it's referenced here by Ian underneath, that Burrows was good at Preston. When we were at Preston last week, I'd been to Huddersfield, and I thought at Huddersfield in the final friendly, his defensive questions were there. At Preston last week, I thought he was solid. I thought he did his defensive job really well. I thought he interchanged really well with Harmer in terms of getting forward. I thought that was a really strong, composed performance from him. Obviously, the difference today is that he was up against a direct winger. Last week, it was wing backs. It was somebody playing out of position. So maybe there's questions still to be answered there. But I'm certainly happy that we've got him in the squad. I'm happy that he's at the club. I think he's going to be a really exciting, really good developing young player. And so the longer we keep him, the better. But we do need to work on the defensive side of his game to make sure that we are able to take him forwards and that he's able to be a really key part of our game. Now, we will end... Where shall we end? Oh, which comment do I go for? We will end with Chris the Blade, because this is something that drives my dad crazy. And so let's talk about it. Why don't people have players on the post on corners? I don't know the answer to this question. Why don't people have players on the corner anymore for corners? It's a sensible thing to do. If you're going to let somebody have a free header towards one end of the goal by glancing it across, somebody's still on the corner, cuts that out, heads it away, boots it away. You should always have a player on the corner. I am with Chris on this. You should always have a player on the posts when corners are coming in. So, thank you so much, everybody, for bearing with me. I will end you with some positivity because I've decided that's who I'm going to be today. We'll see how long it lasts. The answer is probably one more week, depending on what happens next weekend. But for today's positivity, there's two things that I've noted so far from this season as a whole. The first one is that United have got some of the most talented players in the league. In O'Hare, in Harmer in particular, we've seen what he can do on the ball. We've seen his finishing. We've seen his shooting. We've seen a lot of what he's got to offer, and he's a fantastic footballer. We have got some of the best players in this division. As they gel together, as they play together more, they're really going to stand out, and that is something to be really, really excited about in terms of watching us going forward. The second thing is, and I know it's frustrating today because the second half, we still weren't at the level, but there is such a huge drop from the Premier League to the Championship. Watching these two games, watching Preston, watching QPR today, it's like the games are being played at 75, 80% speed compared to what we were against last season. That's why I've got a lot more confidence and a lot more positivity, because United should be good at this level because there's such a drop from who we were playing against last season. I think as this progresses, we will get ourselves up to speed. We will get better and we will be ready to compete and to get towards the top end of this division. Not right at the top. I don't think we're going to be there, but we'll at least be competitive, which is all I can ask for after the shambles that was last season, after the shambles of that second half. Thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with me, for coming along and joining this conversation about a massively frustrating afternoon of watching United. If you want more reaction to today's game, if you want to keep the conversation going, keep talking about United, do flip over to Blade's Ramble. Jimmy, I believe, will be going live very shortly to do his match reaction, talk about his thoughts on today's game. Thanks again so much, everybody, for joining me here today. We go again. It's a new season and we're being positive. Go well, and as always, up the Blades.
He leads us all the way, playing proper football, the Sheff United way. Ole, ole, ole.